Hey, good evening. Welcome to our work session meeting here tonight, which will primarily be a tour with some explanation and also some input from some of our staff, so we're looking forward to that. First thing, let's stand. We have a flag here on the wall, and let's join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have our primary item tonight is our work session. So in approving our agenda here, which is the tour, we need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion from Ann. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Dan. Okay, all those in favor of approving the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries 7-0. So we'll go ahead and start. And who are our leaders tonight, Shiloh, as we get started on our tour? And
Perfect. I'll give a little bit of logistics so you know what's going on while we're doing the tour, okay? Thank you to all of those who've joined. We have some coaches and some staff that you'll hear from, some teachers later on. What you're going to see is that I'm going to carry this around because my goal is to try to make sure that I capture not just all of you, but the interactions and the comments that our staff have. I'm also going to be carrying around what looks like this tiny little insufficient microphone, but it actually catches a ridiculous amount of sound. So one thing to just spoiler alert and right out of the gates, full transparency. Please be cautious of side conversations when things are going on because it will pick up everything. Okay, so buyers be warned on that case. So we do have just a flow that I'll share with you. We're going to start here in the auditorium. We're going to hear first from Mr. McGlynn. Then we have two great band instructors that are going to show us some of the show their facility there. We're going to go then to the roundhouse through some of our locker rooms, out to the field for a little bit, then swing back through to the class hexes, and then we'll finish in the mechanical room. Our goal is there's two objectives to this. We want to get our board and new members an opportunity to see the conditions. It's one thing to read the full facility study. It's another thing to actually get into the schools to see it. And we've also had great staff who've been willing to donate their time this evening to share some of the constraints and some of the impacts that these facilities have. So they're prepared to do that. We'll have about 5 minutes for each station that we go to just share out some of the key highlights that they have, and then some opportunity for questions and answer from the board. And then we have a timekeeper. Jennifer's here, going to do a great job of that, making sure that we stay on target. So with that in mind, I'll turn it over to Mr. McGlynn. Luckily, he's fine being in front of people. And so I'll turn it over to him to talk about some of the impact. So speakers, those that are here, just for you to be aware of, please kind of keep an eye on this and talk towards this little microphone guy right here. Just talk towards it, and we'll be able to capture everything. Mr. McGlynn, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks. Okay, I knew there was no way I was going to get through this in 5 minutes, so that's why I've got a front and back list here. So Mr. Schoper would be proud of me if he's here. I'm going to spread and go through this really quickly, and then I think there's time for questions. Is that it? Okay, so here we go. When I came here 10 years ago and interviewed, I walked in and I said, wow, what a beautiful theater. And it is a beautiful theater. But then my first day on the job, I started walking on the catwalks. What are these lights from the 1950s doing up here? What are the curtains that are kind of ragged state? And that's when I realized that I started talking to Sheldon. A number of people started filling me out on what happened in 1998. So, well, the curtains, I took care of that problem, folks. But, you all know the story there. Sorry, I got to go on. But right now there's a debate, do we have to have a fire curtain or not? And I think that's going back and forth. One of the debates is that a full fly loft was never built here. And I'm guessing maybe that got cut because of cost. If you're wondering what a full fly loft is, see that blue curtain? That should be able to disappear. You shouldn't see it. But we only have 3/4 of a fly loft. It's what the state mandates, and so most of the architects will go at that unless the theater teacher is around and says, no, I want a full fly loft. I wasn't here at the time. You can't blame me. But anyhow, the curtains, hopefully we'll get that fixed here in the next couple months. LED lighting. I've been bit by bit trying to update our lights because these were, you can tell the paint was burned off of these. I think, I'm trying to go back how many principals. Brent, I think, started to help me out. we bought used lights from Collegiate, and so the psych lights, or we started repurposing. Whenever I heard somebody was updating, I'd call them up. What are you doing with your old stuff? And then I think, oh gosh, I'm reading my second or third. Maybe it's Bryce. We started to buy a few more lights. So the first electric, we have new lights, but still half the lights in here are from the 1960s, or they're used lights that we bought. If we went to LED, you would cut your wattage by more than half. You cut it by 70%. Spotlights, again, are from the 1960s. We have one that for a musical you have to have two, so we borrow from the middle school. I'm not going to get through all this. Let me go on down. House lights. You see, we had to turn on the work lights. My 10 years that I've worked here, we've never had all the house lights work, maybe half of them. And again, I think maintenance catwalks got cut when this was built, so they can't access them. It would be an acrobatic feat with some scaffolding to get to those. Right now, of the 40 lights, I think we have 13 that are working. Scenic projector, that's a wish list. That would be great. That's where theaters are going now. I'll move on to the sound system. Sound system, again, was they put in whatever the most inexpensive thing they could in 98. We had some cracked speakers up there. We rent stuff. God bless Jordan Bandy, Hop Sound. Sounds great that we've got sound people here in town that can help us out. But we spend, I don't know, $3,000 to $5,000 a year renting stuff. Last year, because I was at my wit's end, that I spent 3 hours trying to rewire our rack, trying to get some sound that Sounds Great came in. And they took the used system because they had renovated a church here in town. And so we, again, bought a used system. So for the first time, there are stereo speakers here in the theater. But again, it probably needs to be a larger system. Dressing rooms. We don't have dressing rooms. I've never been in a school that didn't have dressing rooms. We use the bathrooms, my classroom, Greg's classroom, the band rehearsal rooms, kids spread out. It would be great to have some dressing rooms. Weight deck. There should have been a weight deck put on the fly line back here. Again, it's not safe. We have to try to balance our fly lines and stack the weights on. A weight deck was a really simple thing that should have been put in. As a matter of fact, just this fall we had an accident. No one was hurt, but we bent some bars on the fly lines because you don't have a weight deck to load and unload weights. Storage, we don't have it. Fire marshal, I'm on his whatever naughty list every time he comes by. You can't stack stuff up. But you look, choir risers, we don't know where to put them. We've got them parked out here. You see our stage is always full with, I like to build stuff, and maybe part of that is my problem. We're always building things. So if you get a chance to go through the scene shop, we've built and built and built trying to stack up things for storage. Okay, then finally, black box theater. If we do merge the junior high with the high school someday, there's no way this theater can be able to handle all the programs. Most schools that have gone that route, Pale is a great example, have built a black box theater, and that's a smaller theater on the back, like our scene shop. You'd have to enlarge it. Would become a black box theater where we could do our smaller plays. You would still have the big stage for the musicals and concerts and choir and orchestra and everything. But, yeah, I was scared to death when I heard, oh, my gosh, the middle school is going to, how are we going to fit everything into this auditorium? Okay, I did that under 5 minutes, right? Okay, and I quickly ran through stuff. Back to our sound system. We have one wireless mic. You need at least 16 to do a musical. Sometimes we buy 14, but again, we rent stuff. I'd love to have our own equipment and not have to constantly go to Sheldon or somebody to say, hey, can we rent some more stuff? So that's it. That was my quick spiel.
Cool. I'll ask the first question. By the way, this is clearly Mr. Schoper would be very proud because you hit the 5 minutes, although the intent is to highlight for you as our board the challenges that our staff face. So I'll just kind of offer this as a question to initiate it, and the board can certainly ask it. What are the two biggest challenges? Of all the challenges you face, what are the two biggest that you face in terms of auditorium and just general theater?
The sound has just been a nightmare. It was just never properly done. And again, I was matter of fact, I was outfitting a new theater in Dallas when all this was happening in '98. But sound definitely, and just the next one perhaps to be storage, no dressing rooms. That from what it was just kind of, I think, an afterthought. Oh, we'll figure it out later. And not to brag, but guys, we've been recognized nationally with our program. And a note that I have in here, we had judges fly in to watch Noise Off. This is 3 years ago. And afterwards, they're talking to the kids, they're praising the show. One of the judges came up, she goes, now, did you actually hang ragged curtains to make it look like a poor ragged theater? And I looked at her and I said, if I say yes, will that get us more points? And she looked at me and said, unfortunately, that's the state of our curtains. This was nationally. And the lady just she was embarrassed for us. I was embarrassed to say, I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys ever saw them. There were chunks that were torn out of the curtains. They were used curtains, we found out, that were hung in here. And the fire marshal was just appalled that we had those ragged curtains hanging here. When we had that incident, they all had to be tossed out. And we're probably really fortunate nothing had happened before then.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
I'm a really nice guy. We've done great things here, beyond what we've had to work with. But I haven't tried to squeak too much. But yeah, I'm kind of into maybe 3 or 4 more years of teaching. I'd love to have this place finally outfitted so I can hand it over to some snot-nosed college kid coming out for Varsity. I'm sorry, everyone's seeing this. I mean, a really nice college kid coming out of school.
How many shows do you do a year in here?
We're big for a 4A school. We do from 4 to 5 shows. I'd put us up against any Blue Valley school. You know, one of our biggest competitors is Paola, another 4A school. The rest of them are 5 and 6A schools that we compete with. And Paola, if we ever do look at a black box, they would be a great, well, all the Blue Valley schools have them, but Paola went this way about 12, 15 years ago. And the lady has been teaching there 43 years. She's 70 years old. And yeah.
There you go, 3 or 4.
Yeah. I just have to hang around till I'm 70 and we'll have this outfitted. So.
How many students do you have in just theater that utilize?
Let's see, for our musicals, we'll have anywhere from 40 to 60 if you put the pit and everything in there. And then for my theater program, for the plays, we have around 30 kids that constantly rotate in and out. And we do. I'll be honest, when the district hired me, it was to do 2 shows. And I just had a great group of kids. I want to give more opportunities. And so we established the rep class where we could add 2 more shows into the season. And that apparently worked. We've been invited to state 5 times over the last 10 years. It's kind of been every other year. So, like I said, we've been really blessed. But I just think the kids put so much into this community and this program. I'd just love to see the investment come back to them. And again, everything's on there.
Other questions from the board? One last question, because you went really, really auctioneer. You did an awesome job, and we really appreciate it. Tell me again about the catwalk. What's the challenge with that?
Well, we have one catwalk and that's great because I've been in schools where you had to crawl on your hands and knees. There's one catwalk to access our lights that we use to light up the front of the stage. But with all these house lights, there should have been maintenance catwalks put in. And I'm guessing, again, I understand things really got, I don't know if anyone was here to speak to that in 1998, but just a lot of things got cut. I think once they got the shell belt, it was kind of one of those things of, oh my gosh, what do we do now? Let's bring in, I'm guessing they brought the used lights from the little theater over here. I probably spent my first 3 or 4 years constantly rewiring stuff. I'm a farm kid, so I grew up, you learn to fix things, but it really got tiring trying to rewire these and put on new connectors and everything else. And like I said, about maybe half, not quite half, probably 40% of our lights are new that we bought a little bit at a time, but it should really all be transitioned to LED. One of these lights burns anywhere from 750 to 1,000 watts, LED 4 watts. I would never have to buy a bulb again or gel, so you color the lights. That's all built into the LEDs. Be cool, be fun.
Well, Mr. McGlynn, thank you, sir. We're going to transition now, Mr. Unruh, and hello, sir, and Mr. Russell in the back
and
there.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my email. Feel free to email me anytime if you've got more questions about what I typed up here.
Just so you know, when we get there, please don't start the spiel until I've got this set up, okay? But actually, you can kind of be walking and talking, but I'll get it set up. Jennifer, thank you for your diligence.
4:35. Oh, yes, and Diary of Anne Frank on April 21st, 22nd here on the MHS stage. Thanks.
Love it. Thank you, sir.
Free appetite.
All you, bud.
Okay. All right, welcome to the band room. This is the room that houses most of our MHS band classes. We've got a concert band and marching band that meets first hour. We've got a jazz band that meets second hour. We kind of outlined some of our primary concerns with our space right now in 3 bullet points, so I'll try to really quickly highlight each of those. First, the first major season the band goes through is marching band season, and we've got some limitations right now that we kind of deal with on a daily basis during that season. During marching band season, our rehearsal space is the parking lot out here. It's a large space, but it does suffer kind of the annual wear and tear of the weather and ice, and there's potholes that grow. We are often kind of kicking around rocks and avoiding the holes out there. The nice thing about that space is it's very close. So we get to move our equipment directly out there, and we get to get straight to rehearsal. That's great. The quality of that rehearsal is sometimes impeded by the condition of a parking lot to march on. So that is not ideal. Our performance space has always been at the football field across town. That is a really beautiful field to march on and perform on. However, it's really difficult for us to practice, like for dress rehearsals, actually practicing on a football field. Really, really minimal time. We've been fortunate that McPherson College has hosted us for our band camp in the summer recently. But once we get into the school year, our practice time on our actual performance space is incredibly limited, once every few weeks. And it's becoming more difficult because the college schedule becomes more and more packed as well. So that has become a bigger and bigger issue, as well as the wear and tear we put on all of our instruments. When we are hauling things, it takes an immense amount of time to load and move that equipment. The kids do a wonderful job of pitching in to make that happen. But it does take a lot of time, and it also puts a lot of wear, especially on our big instruments, which are quite expensive as well. So all of that movement takes years off the life of our instruments, and that's many thousands of dollars that we use also. So those are some of the big concerns we have in the marching band season in the fall. The majority of the year, however, is more concert band related, which means we're inside playing in here during the winter, during the spring. And even during the marching season, we're still using this room a lot. We've got a marching band and a concert band that pushes past the 90-person threshold. This room is not anywhere near big enough to house all of those people. It may look, as you walk in here, if you're not a regular in the band room, it probably looks relatively organized in here. Right now we set it up to look a little bit like our rehearsals would when the full band is in here. But you got to imagine that they're coming in at 7:50 a.m. We've got jackets, we've got backpacks, we've got instrument cases that have to come off the shelves, open, and take out large instruments. Every square inch of this floor is generally covered and packed with bodies, instruments, and all of the things that go along with them. So as you can imagine, movement around the room, nearly impossible. If somebody needs to get from one side of the room to the other, it's a mess. It's a real mess. If we need to have some of the band leave during mid-rehearsal, which happens frequently, also a mess. We're just tripping all over each other. So I don't know what a fire marshal would say, but it's not awesome in here when we put everybody here. During the part of the winter and in the spring, we actually split our concert band into two bands. And that's kind of a pedagogical thing. We've got a really large band. It sometimes is advantageous to split it into two bands that one of us each directs, me and Mr. Russell. The problem is we don't have a space most of the time for that. We will often use the stage in the auditorium for the second band to rehearse, but at times the stage is unavailable. Mr. McGlynn puts on a lot of shows, we just heard, and that stage gets filled up with the set. We don't know where to rehearse. Sometimes the choir room is available, but Mr. Griggs has a full schedule as well with choir, so we often don't have a place to rehearse. That can also kind of impede the work we're able to do. Second hour is our jazz band. Our jazz band program has been growing. We've split it into two jazz bands. That's a great thing. It's especially great for the kids. It is almost impossible to make it work though because we've run out of places to put our bands. During second hour,
we had the discussion with jazz band. Do we cut kids or do we have that second? Do we cut kids from the jazz band? And we said we're going to make it work this year, even though we didn't have a place technically, and we just kind of make it work with Mr. McGlynn. But
some days
approaching where we'll have to cut kids.
Some days in class we have to take turns with the bands playing in this room. So each band gets about half as much rehearsal time as they should because we have to take turns. If the stage is busy, actually Mr. McGlynn has a second hour class, so often not available. Mr. Griggs has a second hour class, also not available. So it really is starting to kind of cramp what we are able to do. The third and final most important bullet point, along with all the rest of these, is our equipment storage. And that's largely a space issue as well, although some of the quality is starting to diminish and just need upkeep. If you check out our shelves, you'll see that they're ramshackle and falling apart. That might be a quicker fix if we were just to replace that. The problem is the back cabinets that you can see along the wall with the multiple doors, that houses our percussion equipment, at least our concert band percussion equipment. It's bursting at the seams. It's pretty full. Right now, our percussion instruments are set up, but at the end of each class period, they go away. This floor gets cleared. So this is all kind of for demonstration purposes today. It's really full back there, and it also cuts into our room space. So we have even less space. We also have a closet over here for our marching percussion stuff. It's fitting in there, but just barely. One of the main ways that we make it all fit is that we are currently storing equipment in our practice rooms. So those don't get to be used by students. They are storage because we don't have more storage. So those are some of the main concerns. I will say, last thing, we've looked at, there's a music equipment company called Wanger that does a lot of outfitting of music rooms. They have a really nice, thorough guide for planning performance and rehearsal spaces. And according to their guidelines, they would suggest that we should have at least, for the number of people in our band program, we should have at least a 2,500 square foot room. We have about 1,500. So we're close to 50%, maybe 60% of the recommended space right here. I think at times, yes, it would be great to have a bigger room because of all of what you're just seeing here. But also that secondary room is just as important. We need another space for our instrumental musicians to be able to have class so that we don't have to limit their opportunities. So
when we look at middle school, we've got almost 100 in high school right now. We have 40 some in 8th grade band and 52 in our 7th grade band. We're going to get bigger, and this problem is going to get worse for sure. We'll have kids sitting up on top of the percussion cameras.
They might love that, but I wouldn't.
Thank you both again for that. Obviously, board members, questions that you would have for, looks like
Not about where you
Ann
sat.
and then Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say this looks exactly the same from a long time ago.
Clarinet's still sitting there.
Yeah. What happens in this room when there's bad weather? It rains, it's really windy, that sort of thing. What happens?
Good
You
question.
can see it from here. When it rains outside, it rains inside also over there.
By the
That corner of the-
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. The corner, you can kind of see the windows where the water spots have dripped down. We don't have stalactites or anything, but the water does drip there.
Looks
There's
like
all.
that corner does just fall off.
It does sometimes feel like that corner of the building may just leave us, but
You can see, the water spots on the windows inside if it rains just about.
did you have a question?
From the marching band rehearsal, what would be ideal outdoor space? I mean, what you say what you don't want, but what do you want?
Okay.
Yeah.
So good question. A really nice scenario is if your football stadium is on campus with the high school and also in close proximity to like the exterior doors of a band room. So if you go to some away schools in our league, I can think of a couple, although I don't go to all of the away football games. But a lot of times their band room, maybe the back side of the band room, it opens up pretty close to the football stadium. That minimizes the distance that your equipment has to travel, which saves wear and tear, but also just massive amounts of time at the beginning and end of a rehearsal. And also it allows the kids to practice where they're going to perform, and improves the quality of their daily rehearsals. So in short, that's what that should look like, I think.
When we have an away or when we have a home game and we're across town, that's about 45 minutes of loading equipment and moving that they could be spent playing music and rehearsing if we were just right out here. So it's a big difference.
And where are your competitions? What sort of, that's also on a football field, right?
Correct, yes. So our home performances are at football games. That's what the community mostly sees. The competitive side of what we do takes place on mostly college football stadiums, but I think I can say exclusively on turf football fields. I
The
think
K
they
State,
all
so
are.
if we could get like a Bill Snyder family
Yeah,
stadium.
just right up there. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so some of our big competitions are often at college football stadiums on turf. I think they're exclusively on turf. That is where we go for those. So.
And just another clarification from a band booster standpoint, the money you guys bring in from boosters, what kind of stuff does that go towards?
Okay. Well, the money from band boosters largely goes back to two main areas. It will support kind of annual program costs, mostly marching band related. Our marching band drill design for our marching band shows costs thousands of dollars. So it will often go to defray those sorts of costs. And occasionally we will also, if we have the ability, we'd love for it to support maybe replacing some instruments that have expired or worn out.
A lot of times when we run out of budget money and we have a tuba falls off the truck and we got to have one, it goes to something like that.
Yeah, and if there is a little, it's a fail-safe. Instrument, maybe it doesn't, we don't have to buy a new one, but we need some last-minute quick repairs, and so we can ask for that support there. Good question.
Thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate it. By the way, I guess we asked that earlier. You guys pretty successful, I guess, aren't you?
Yeah, we've had some
We-
good years. Yeah,
We try to be successful. Yes. Yeah, we've had a really good group of kids I think for a long time. But they're doing well. We have kids recognized at the all-state level. We've had kids in the last 5 years, multiple students who have been recognized at the all-national level. As most of you know, we travel across the state, occasionally traveling out of state nationally for competitions and performances. So it's a very active organization. And sometimes we feel like we're bursting at the seams a little bit. So.
Well, thank you. It doesn't happen without good teachers and good support, so we appreciate it. We'll travel next to the roundhouse. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. And you're going to see yourself on camera. But we'll transition here.
no music stands.
Or photograph.
And then we'll be filing forms.
Oh no, I think it's your turn.
You already
so,
went.
He's so photogenic, though. He's so photogenic.
But he already went.
You probably won't.
Thank you guys. First thought was on Smoky Valley, and I walked in here and I was like, "This is the size of McPherson's band room."
Yeah, I went to.
Smoky Valley's, right?
All right, I'm going to start here. I guess for the record, my name is Shane Bacchus. I'm the activities director here at McPherson High, finishing my 15th year, so almost. So I guess just before I get into my spiel, I'm going to try not to come across too frustrated, okay? But we are very passionate about what we do here in all of our programs, and there is a lot of frustration about the lack of facilities that our school district has not been able to provide for whatever reason, or our community chose not to provide for whatever reason. And I just want to say that I'm not blaming anyone here. So I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to be straight with you. Okay. So for my board members, I'm going to give you a little history lesson today. I'll give that to one of our board members. This is a pamphlet that was given out at the dedication on September 15th, 1963, when this building first opened. 59 years ago, which means that over 59 years ago, we had a school board and a community with enough foresight to build this facility. And 59 years later, this is one of the premier basketball and volleyball facilities in the state of Kansas. We also use it for fine arts and graduation and all of these other different activities. And this is what 90% of McPherson sees when they come to a game. They see this great facility that our community provided for our kids over 59 years ago. And it's great still today. You guys have been to games. There's no atmosphere like it. The problem is, well, and our volleyball program gets access to this facility every day for practice. Our basketball programs get access to this facility every day for practice. Our PE kids access every day. Our fine arts programs have access to it. The problem is not inside this building right here. The problem is with our outdoor facilities. I think everyone here knows that. And I think some of the frustration is that I've been on this building tour probably 10 times in the last 15 years. A lot of these guys standing in this room have been on this facility tour 10 times. We've talked about it in committees. We've had study groups. Everybody knows the problems. But we haven't been able to find a solution. And as I stand here right here today, I don't have any place to play varsity football next year. I don't have any place to play JV football next year. I don't have any place to play freshman football next year. I don't have any place to play varsity soccer next year. I don't have any place to play JV soccer next year. I have no place to practice track, and I have no track to host a track meet on.
And that's just high school, right?
And that is just high school. So the problem is not in this gym. This gym is fantastic. It's the Taj Mahal of high school gyms in the state of Kansas. The problem is all those other areas. We are the largest 4A high school in Kansas. Our enrollment was 729 this year. It's the same as Kansas City Piper, who was the smallest 5A school. So we're one student away from being a 5A high school. We've bounced back and forth between 4A and 5A multiple times since I've been to AD here. We have every program that all 6A schools in the state of Kansas offer. We just added girls golf. The only thing we don't have is gymnastics. And there's only about 7 schools in the state that have it. So our kids have all these opportunities to participate, but they don't have a facility that they can go to and use on a regular basis and call their own. And it's a travesty. We're a 4A high school, and most 1A high schools in this state have better facilities than us, outdoor facilities. And again, the problem's not in here where we're standing. I had an opportunity recently to have a conversation with the Valley Center principal. And this is the reality of things. Parents window shop. Valley Center passed a bond issue. They have a brand new high school. They have 2 turf fields out back of their high school for their kids to use. They have a stadium in their community for their high school to use. They have a middle school stadium in their community for their kids to use. And our conversation kind of went like this. We saw an increase in enrollment of over 100 students once we opened our school because parents choose what community they want to live in based on their school facilities. He tells me, on his block alone, there are 3 families that all work at Pfizer, and they all live in Valley Center. And that's the reality of it. We need to make some decisions, and we need to make some decisions quickly, and we need to make the right decisions, because our decisions are either going to be program builders or program killers. And I've sat on the facilities committee, I've told those guys the same thing. So again, I'm trying to rein in my frustration. But that's the reality we're in right now. It is a travesty. It's a travesty. I have 2 kids in high school right now. My youngest wants to run track. She's going to go to her first track practice tomorrow. Next year, she doesn't have a track to run on. Why would she want to go to school here if that's her passion? And that's the reality. And we're going to lose people. We're going to lose staff members. We're going to lose families. And that's just the reality of it. So, I know my time. I'm running over. The tours of the locker rooms will be very quick, I promise you, because you won't want to stay in there too long. So this place opened in 1959. Great place. Our issues in the roundhouse, our bleachers. Okay? In most gyms in the state, you push a button, your bleachers come out automatically. It takes 15 minutes to set up for a game. In this gym, we use things called mules. I see one sitting around here. Right over there with the yellow cord and right over there underneath that basket. You got to hook onto each section and pull them out manually. It takes a good day to set this gym up for anything, which means that's a day that our maintenance and facility guys are spending in here setting up for a game where they could be doing something else. Our bleachers were put in 2006-ish.
right before.
We went cheap, I'm assuming, because most of the bleachers on this side are cracking. You could see over here in this section where we have the black inlays, we've had to replace those 3 sections because the bleachers break. Now, I will be the first to admit our student section is not the kindest on our bleachers, but you can also go over in the visitor section where the parents sit and see the same broken bleachers. Brakes don't work right, just hard to set up. Our HVAC system in here, I think is vintage 1963. Sheldon, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, 2 of the units are.
It's either too hot or too cold. It's never just right. And those guys work tirelessly on it. Our scoreboards are obsolete. Specifically the ones on the end, they've been retrofitted with wireless technology. We can't buy scoreboard bulbs for them because they're too old. They don't make them anymore. Our wireless scoreboard controllers, anytime one goes on the fritz, we got to send it off. It costs me several $100s for them to put old parts in. So our scoreboards are obsolete, even the middle one. And then the locker rooms. So
1 second before we go to locker rooms.
Yes.
Are you going to talk about the locker rooms now?
we're going to go in there. I'm just going to show them,
Okay.
and that's about it.
Okay. So just opportunity for questions.
Yes.
One of the things I would clarify, and this is a beautiful place, there's no doubt about it, and you refer to it as the Taj Mahal, I think, with maybe director quoting you on that. It's a great place, but just from a mechanical perspective, this is heated and cooled by Original.
2 of the units are original.
Okay, and we'll be able to see those in the mechanical room later, right?
You'll be able, well, you won't see the units. You'll see where the
You'll see where the
water comes from.
Okay, so we'll have an opportunity for that.
We go through the weld shop and you'll see.
From a roofing standpoint or from a maintenance standpoint,
The roof was just recoated, so we got probably another 10 years on most of the high school roof. The 95 edition needs attention.
Okay.
But this old part, we got it through that hail damage we had last May. We recoated the roof with a special coating and gained another 10-year warranty.
Okay.
But I don't know which units. That one's running, that one's running, so maybe these other 2.
questions from our board members?
So Shane, you mentioned to set up for a game, but what about taking down like the same day-long process?
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, in January we had about 14 straight home basketball dates with our tournament, which
Right.
is a little excessive, I know.
Whose schedule is that?
Yeah, but we had to leave these bleachers out for over a month because it's so labor intensive to push them in and out. And when we do that, we lose all this space for our PE classes to use or for our basketball team to use the side goals for practice. So pull them out's a problem, push them in is equally a problem.
I'm gonna guess that these goals aren't ideal, or like it'd be awesome to have volleyball nets that come down from the ceiling that you didn't even talk about. Like that would be wish list stuff as well, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you could do the volleyball nets in here
Well,
coming
not
down the
here,
ceiling,
yeah.
but it would be awesome because Coach Doyle
Up, down,
spends a
up,
lot
down,
of
up,
time
down.
putting nets up and down. Now, I will say these goals and the mechanisms are original. We haven't moved that goal from the down position all year because, 2 years ago, we tried to put it up, and instead of bending up, it bent out. And it was like a day before a game, and we were scrambling to try to get it put back in position. So,
Dean Brown was a big help getting
Yeah.
it welded back together.
so I mean, yeah, they're 59 years old too, and probably need some updating.
It's all set.
With the scoreboards, a lot of districts get sponsored. Like we have sponsorships on there. Have we looked at trying to get sponsors that actually buy the scoreboards, like a lot of other places, and what's been the thought with that?
Years ago, you used to do it with your Pepsi or Coke contract. They've eliminated that. Those companies don't do that anymore. The advertising you see up there now are sold by our Booster Club. They're called our Elite Booster Club members. So they give money every year, and that money goes back into our programs for things like soccer balls and volleyballs and nets and all those kind of equipment stuff. So I've never actually looked into trying to get someone to sponsor to purchase a scoreboard. But if you know anybody, we're always looking for sponsorship, buddy. All right, other questions? All right, from
Hold on, let me make sure. Can we see you?
like I was saying, kind of on the walk in here, this is our boys' PE locker room we use for most of our PE classes. This is also the visiting team locker room when teams come to see us, whether that's boys basketball, girls basketball, volleyball, they all use the same facility. This is vintage 1963. I don't think this place has been touched with the exception of maybe some lockers since then. Sheldon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think these units work anymore. Our heating and air.
They were actually.
Okay, they work now.
They got them working.
Okay.
They didn't work for a while.
The ventilation down here is not good. The showers don't work properly. You could go in there and you can sit on the toilet and hold hands with your closest friend at the toilet next to them because there's no dividers in between them. So as you can imagine, again, we are athletically a premier Kansas high school across the board. We host two of the best high school basketball tournaments in the state. People are on a waiting list to come in here and play in our tournaments. We host one of the best volleyball tournaments in the state. People are on a waiting list to get into that. And when they roll in, they walk in and see that beautiful gym, and then we stick them in this dungeon. I mean, it's vintage 1963. That's just, I don't know anything else to say about it. Any questions about this one?
I will say, to add, every Monday, I have to turn the showers on first thing in the morning, because if I don't, then sewage comes up through those drains. And we've had that issue come up quite a bit, but what we found is, again, I shouldn't have done it this morning, I'm sorry. But yeah, it's really potent in here if I don't do that every Monday.
I got a question. So there's been a lot of discussion, especially with the last bond, about go somewhere else, tear down the roundhouse, or do we build here, right? So first of all, what's kind of your thoughts on that? Given this, you've got limited room to work with. Would you renovate this? What would you do with this space? Do you build locker rooms somewhere else? What do you guys see as the ideal?
You're asking me my opinion?
I am asking you your opinion.
All right, my opinion is our school district couldn't pass a $113 million bond issue. There's no way we're going to pass a $200 million bond issue to go build something off-site. I was on the visioning committee. I sat through all those meetings, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that was on there, that was about the cost. We need to do the same things that El Dorado has done, that Salina South has done, where they take the parts of their building that they want to keep and renovate them, tear down the parts that they don't want to keep, and build them back. One of the things I wish, instead of taking this tour for the 10th time, I wish we could take you guys to a building where they've done it and compare what we have to what other people have. I mean, we were at Circle Tuesday night or Friday night. Beautiful.
Every school we go to is beautiful.
El Dorado, they have a roundhouse. Beautiful facilities. They rebuilt their school around it. Salina South did the same thing. They had the pod system, similar to what our hexes are. Tore them down, built a beautiful school around it. In my opinion, we need to do that on this side.
So what, more specifically though, from the athletic side, would you want locker rooms built on somewhere else, or would you want these locker rooms renovated?
I think you renovate these locker rooms for activities that are in this gym. And I think you have to add locker rooms for a stadium site. You go to all these facilities and they have what's called a field house, I believe is the terminology, where at the end of the field you'll see a long building that has 2 locker rooms, maybe your concession stand, maybe a couple restrooms, and it's all right there at the end of the field. We went and looked at Abilene before Christmas. They just did a wonderful project up there on renovating their outdoor facility. It's beautiful. And that's what we need. And we need it sitting outside these doors so that our kids can use it, so that our band can use it, so that our football and soccer program can walk outside and use it and not get into into a car and drive across town, or share it with some other entity where they're more worried about access for their students than they are about access for our students. And I guess, does that answer your question? Yes. Other questions?
The girls' side looks almost the same, except they put in maroon lockers from upstairs that don't match.
Does it also have missing bathroom doors?
No, they have two. Oh, we only have two. So then the bathrooms get really full because they go somewhere else to go to the bathroom because the girls, two is not very good.
Any other questions?
Where are we?
We're going to go see vintage 1986 locker room next.
Awesome. 86?
Or whatever they built the Auditorium. I think it was in the 80s.
Oh yeah, that's that too.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna grab technology and we're going upstairs, is that right?
Upstairs to the locker room.
Thank you. Good. Let me make sure that the green light sounds good.
All right, so this is what we refer to as our varsity boys locker room. This is vintage 1980 something, whatever year that the auxiliary gym was built. 1985, okay? Vintage 1985. So it's 20-some years newer than the one downstairs. The problem with this varsity locker room that we have is it's not big enough for all of our programs. For example, boys soccer plays in the fall. You guys get a locker room in here?
Change on the practice field.
Change on the practice field, because all this space is taken up by our 90 football players. And it's still not big enough for them.
We do have you guys sharing lockers.
In the winter, we house boys basketball, wrestling. What else am I missing? In here. Boys swimmers don't have a locker space, or bowlers don't have a locker space. We try to cram all our wrestlers into the back room there to kind of keep them separated. Doesn't always work well. And then you get to the spring, and we have 7 varsity programs that started today. 7. And we locker what? We don't locker track.
We can't.
Soccer. Golf.
Basically what happens in the spring is we try and accommodate as many varsity athletes as we can, but the fact of the matter is a lot of them are still downstairs because we have to keep a balance between who's in PE, who's in sports, who's here, who's there. And it's Coach Doyle would attest to this, it's very difficult to try and juggle all of that 3 times throughout the year.
And that's what I'm doing right now as we speak, flipping people. And
So we have a locker room shortage, big time. So, questions about this space?
Is there specific questions about this space?
Or questions in general?
Yes. I have a general question. And it's a coach that says, be careful about the frustration, but I'm going to pose it because I think it struck me as you shared that, Shane, and feel free, coaches. One of the things that I heard consistently through feedback from the community is we focus too much on sports. We focus too much on sports. We spend too much money on sports. We focus too much on athletics. And then we take a tour and we don't have enough lockers for all of our programs. In fact, we have for half of our programs. What would be your response to that?
My response to that in general is school activities is the best at-risk program that any school offers, anywhere. And the life lessons and the skills that these kids build just being part of a team warrant any amount of money that a school district spends on it. And when these kids graduate and leave us 25 years from now, they're going to remember the lessons that Coach Adrian taught them, or Coach Pav, or Coach Doyle, long after they're going to forget the math formula and the leadership, or just the leadership, and just all those intangibles that kids get from being part of activities. Whether that's the band that practices on a parking lot and consistently is the best band in the state, the theater program that doesn't even have lights in the theater, that has been invited to nationals and state competitions consistently, the soccer program that is a top 4 soccer program in the state of Kansas. We are the best private school soccer program anywhere. And we practice on a soccer field that's too small, on a surface that we never play on. A football program that's been to the state semifinals 4 years in a row and has won more games than most other football programs in the state of Kansas the last 15 years that don't even get to practice on the field that they play on. Oh, and by the way, when we kick field goals on the field we play on, the field goal is a college-sized field goal, and guess how many playoff games we've lost by 1 point?
As a matter of fact, I can tell you we lost. We lost to Arc City by 1 point, in which if you look at the end zone copy that Arc City sent us, if we were playing on a high school field, that extra point would have been good. And we would have an opportunity to go into overtime. Now, wins and losses, I know that doesn't necessarily matter to a lot of people, but that would have been the first time in 108 years of football that we made it to the state championship game. But we didn't.
The expectation for our programs are here. Our community expects great things, fine arts, athletically, in the classroom, and the reality is what we're providing our students and our student participants is subpar. It's laughable.
Shane, do you think the disconnect comes in? You said it well in there. Like, they see the roundhouse and they think that that's the package, but everything outside of that shiny arena that we all love is this. Like, this is the reality that we need people to see to know that we need this, right?
100% agree. If you look outside of the roundhouse, we have a great roundhouse. We have 8 pretty nice tennis courts that are 5 years past being resurfaced. I'm just going to throw that in there. But we don't have gym facilities for our middle school programs. We don't have a wrestling room for our middle school programs. We don't have outdoor facilities for any of our outdoor programs right now. You know, we have a roundhouse and 8 tennis courts that needed resurfaced 5 years ago. Don't even get me started about the weight room.
That part of the tour. I mean, I could take you through after we get done, but basically, most schools have a professional floor, for example, and Mr. Bacchus and a couple of coaches and I had to go to Orscheln's and buy rubber mats to try and fit those in. But that's another story. Sorry, thanks for bringing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions?
You said that 7 varsity teams start today. Do you have a guess of how many kids are use these facilities?
Track, we have 94 today.
40 for soccer.
So, Tino, you could tell us how many physicals and stuff did we process for
We process over probably 200 just for maybe spring. Granted, some of our kids are in dual sports, but like Pam said, there's 95 track kids. Chris has almost 30 plus soccer girls. Softball has almost 30 softball girls. Baseball has about that same number. Along with our girls swim team, there's probably 15 of those. They don't even practice here at the school. And then golf, there's probably 20 golfers. So I mean, we have probably over 200 plus participants just in the spring, and that's the same also in the fall. And that's not counting the band participants in the fall marching band.
Forensics participants, a
There's
target team that's getting ready to fire up here.
Cheer
Oh,
and
yes.
dance, nobody mentioned
Cheer
that.
and
Cheer and
dance.
dance go in the varsity locker room until the season is over.
and they practice.
I'm moving them down on Wednesday.
So
Wasn't there in the vision, wasn't there a certain percentage that would be optimal to get to a number of kids who are involved in extracurricular activities? Or isn't there a statistic that shows that the success rate of students is much higher when they're involved?
I could provide you all kinds of data
Right.
about the benefits of being involved in any activity at high school, athletics, fine arts, Scholars Bowl, whatever it might be. It just ties kids to the school, and I could give you all that if you want.
They also get tracked academically too.
Yeah.
I mean, Tennille's giving us grade checks every 2 weeks and keeps.
Every week, every Monday.
It keeps us, trying to keep them eligible, and we're trying to stay connected with their teachers as well and with the child as well, so they can, stay eligible, and ultimately that's a good thing.
If there's not any other questions, we're gonna attempt to get out on the field now. Look to see what time sunset is this evening, so let's get out there while there's a little bit of light if there is. Okay.
The girl over there, we will train.
Okay, the first story.
When daylight savings hits in the fall, we have to turn the tennis courts lights on, and we huddle around that corner over there. We get about 30 yards of visibility. So you say turn the lights on. We've had to make it work as best as possible, close to those tennis courts. We could walk out there, but honestly, we tried to have track practice out there. We warmed up, and it's not safe. And if you don't believe me, I would encourage you to walk out there sometime, but you're liable to sprain an ankle. As a matter of fact, this fall, my recommendation is we don't use this field in its current state. And I know that our maintenance staff, they have worked tirelessly to make sure that we have something decently nice to practice on. But the fact of the matter is, it is not safe. And I will show you the dimensions when we get into my office. But when they built the tennis courts, on this half, a football field is 53 1/3 yards wide. We have 46 on our width. And yes, that makes a big difference. And I'll explain that a little bit more later on. But the sheer safety, and a kid said it best today. He said, "Coach, it feels like I'm walking on a sack of walnuts." So it is very difficult. As a matter of fact, as you look down at the tennis courts there's a concrete slab. That's where we had track practice today. Because we do have access to the track this year, but I have a bunch of freshmen that cannot get rides. And early on in the season, I refuse to just tell them to get there somehow, because I don't want them jumping in a vehicle with another kid, or I don't want something to happen to them. So that right there, that concrete slab that's about 20 yards long, that was our track for today. Questions on the field?
How many groups you practice out here?
Currently, our football team and our PE, when it's nice, we'll go out there.
Does soccer also use that?
Soccer's on the other side over there. Yeah. So I don't know. Don't take my word for it. At some point, it's not safe to even walk out in the dark. because you will roll an ankle. But I do have a picture I can show you when we get into my office of what it actually looked like.
So on the soccer field, it was probably 6 years ago. We were at the same point that Coach Pav was, where it wasn't safe for our kids to practice there. We had kids spraining ankles all the time, and just the ball bouncing constantly when you tried to pass it. And soccer is played basically on the ground the entire time. And we made the decision where it wasn't safe, and even though it was a huge pain, we went to Grant because that was the best option we had, and it took a grandparent of a player making a extremely generous donation to give us a surface to practice on. And it took a whole season, though, where we didn't practice here at the high school, and we'll talk more about the challenges that come from that. But that's where we were on the soccer side.
Yes, sir.
So when's the last time we did any maintenance on that practice field?
4 years ago, they brought in sand to level it out, in which we actually hosted practice over there, which is even worse. But that was okay. They did bring in sand and leveled it. The problem is that company that came in, we could not afford them to maintain what they had originally put in. So what ended up happening is this over time. So yeah, 4 years ago.
So my question is, if we put new stuff out there, if we put a turf or whatever, how are we going to maintain that?
There's not much maintenance to it.
To turf, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very different. And isn't there, Kevin, I think, or maybe Luke, you can talk about this, at least in the last one, there was like a maintenance, 25-year maintenance plan that kind of went along with when you start with new, it's kind of like if you build a new house, you don't have the same maintenance as if your house was built in the 1960s, right? So there was a maintenance plan. Am I right?
On the turf?
No, just generally
On
for the whole.
I don't know that we had a maintenance plan. I do think that what we were talking about was the longevity of what you would have. You would have
to maintain turf, you rake it with the implement that you pull behind like a gator, and you sweep it to even out the rubber that's in the infill.
Right.
What you don't have is you don't have dead spots of grass that never grow back and create voids in the playing surface with turf because you always maintain that level. You can get on it when it's wet, and if we get on this when it's too wet, we ruin it for the rest of the year. You know,
I'm just concerned from a maintenance side. It's nice to have the shiny new, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we don't want it, but we got to be thinking about if we can't maintain the grass out there now and we can't spend the money or we don't have the manpower, the question arises why spend the millions of dollars for it to go down, south, because we're not going to maintain that either.
Well, you're not going to spend nearly the hours maintaining turf you do grass, and it's cheaper to maintain turf once you put it in.
But we're doing nothing now.
Also, I want to correct a misconception that it hasn't been maintained, because I think if you go back and look,
it'd be safe if it had been maintained.
Well,
No,
I think if you
you
go
said it's
back
unsafe.
and look at the budgetary issues and everything that's happened with capital outlay that we would spend hours talking about tonight, the fact to say it's a misconception to say that it hasn't been maintained. Has it been the facility that we want to be able to have? No, because of the costs and different things that associated that go all the way back for a long period of time. Also, when you have new or upgraded facilities, you have the ability, like we've talked about in the facilities committee, to create a maintenance plan. Right now, I think Sheldon said it best earlier, you're just patching, you're just hoping because of things that happened 10 or 12 or 14 years ago. So I want to be careful that we don't say that things aren't maintained, because that's a misconception that's not accurate.
Well, to say it's unsafe means that it hasn't been maintained. If we're saying it's
Let me
being
interject a
maintained and
couple
it's
of
not
things.
safe.
Let me, as your superintendent, interject a couple of things. These coaches are telling you their perspective, and we appreciate that they're bringing that. What their point is if any one of us tries to walk across there's challenges with that surface as it stands. And if we're going to place substantial amounts of time out there next year of any kind, we're going to have to do some work on it. Is that capturing what you're intending to say?
Yeah, and what I'll just to add, that is why communities go with turf, because of the less maintenance costs.
And I'm not arguing for against
No,
turf. I'm just talking to I want to make sure that when we spend our money, it's taken care of. That's what I want to make
let me also give you, and here in a little bit, when we finish up this tour, we're going to finish in the maintenance area, or in the mechanical area. We'll have an opportunity to see where hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent because of things breaking down. And so when I hear it, I'm going to use kind of Ian's comments to just clarify some things. As I've shared with you many times, when we are utilizing our capital outlay to fix substantial mechanical failures, and we have a facility plan that shows we have any waking moment some kind of major mechanical issue could fail here, we have to make decisions, and that predated, quite frankly, a lot of us sitting here tonight. And what that means is we have to make intentional, selective choices about how well we maintain something and what gets replaced when it gets replaced. Because when on the opposite side of this building, when water started bubbling up through the concrete, that was a $250,000 check that we wrote that we couldn't put into carpet. We couldn't put into doing fields different. And so those are the challenges that are faced, and appreciate these guys highlighting what experiences they have out here. One of the key items that I'll also kind of, Coach mentioned the lights, but again, without a field, I guess you want to talk to Coach Fab and Coach Adrian. What does not having an agreement at Mac College, how's that impact your programs?
Not having an agreement?
Correct.
I would say that one's twofold, both positively and negatively. It's negative in that we don't have a place to play. What the public sees is the product we put on a Friday night, or a Thursday night. They don't see the daily grind out here in trying. Not only do we worry about what we're going to do or how we're going to do it, now as coaches and players, we got to worry about where we're going to do this. So, like for example, this year, I'm not supportive of entering into agreement with McPherson College. I'm just not. For example, this year we had 1 hour. We had the 3 o'clock to 4:30 time slot at the college to practice. We can't start practice until 3:30. So I have to do all of my kicking game and manipulate our practice schedules for the 1 hour that we get out there, and then we have to come back and then finish. And so there's positives to it and there's definitely negatives to it. But the current format you can't be successful with the current status that we have.
Soccer shared the very similar concerns where we had 3 total practices on the turf for the entire fall season with our boys, which is the surface you play your games on, and that's not a home field advantage. And when your teams and all the programs we've talked about today have been extremely successful, those margins to make that last jump, to get that 1 point, to beat Miege and not lose in overtime or by 1 goal for 6 times, those margins become important. And when you don't have that opportunity to practice where you play, it has an impact on performance, obviously.
Speaking of that, just as another question, how many grass fields do you play soccer
on? 0 now. Hutch is the only one, but they just put in a beautiful complex there with LED lights. They did it right, but that's the only one.
We play on 0.
Really?
0 grass fields.
Just might add to it, when you're trying to get grass to grow after their season's over with and the spring season, there's just not enough time when luckily we're successful.
Correct, yeah.
So we're practicing later into the season.
Right.
So your fall maintenance of planting grass, fertilizing, and all that is delayed. And oftentimes you're putting seed down for nothing because by the time it freezes, we're done. And then in the spring, you're in the same boat. They're out there playing. There's not enough time for that to recover. I'm not trying to make excuses. That's just an example of what grass practice is.
Do you want to tell them who else uses this field and this?
This field is also used by our community. So I know at I sit on the board for the McPherson Youth Football Association, and this year we had over 300 kids involved in just youth football alone. That doesn't count youth soccer. But we were paying Grant Complex $6,000 to rent their facility to practice on, and so I shifted it over here, so where our kids are walking onto the practice field when we are walking off. And you want to talk about a program builder, because these young men, they are seeing our players, and our players are talking to them. I can't think of a better program builder than that. So yes, we do offer it to our youth football organization, which there's a ton of those kids all playing. And I will also tell you, due to our lack of facilities, we are playing a majority of our youth football games on the road. And we'll talk about it in there, but there's really not a whole lot of sense of pride for what we have as a result.
Chase, do you want to bring up middle school football?
Middle school football is another beast. I don't know how they get it done, but they go out to Grant Complex to play their games, and where they play, the bathrooms are a half a mile away. There's no locker rooms. There's no facilities there. There's makeshift bleachers. The playing surface is okay, but again, we are the laughingstock of the state. I just went to a clinic last weekend, and Bueller, their coaches, were laughing and said, "No, seriously, we will offer you our facility because we feel bad for your kids," and that is our biggest rival, offering up something that they've invested in for us.
Coach, what do you say, and this would be for either or both of you, what do you say for the folks who felt like, because again, I appreciate Shane sharing earlier the comments about that, we focus too much on athletics. One of the things that was brought up quite often during the last bond was that two facilities, they saw two facilities, and they saw that, or fields, and they saw that as being excessive. What would be your perspective on that?
Well, my perspective on that is they're wrong, respectively. We need a place for our middle schoolers to practice, and to practice safely and efficiently in terms of cost. So to have two turf facilities, and I have done the research on this, once you are putting in one turf facility, to put in another turf facility at the same time dramatically reduces your cost. So they may look at it as, wow, why are we doing this? Why are we putting in two turf facilities? Well, the fact of the matter is that the cost goes way down when you're buying in bulk, and that's true with almost anything. But to offer an opportunity for our middle schoolers, our youth, our citizens in the community to come and exercise on something safe, soft, and nice, let alone the pride factor in all of that.
I'll also add to that, we practice football and soccer at the same time, right? So two facilities gives us the flexibility. If there were two turf fields anywhere we decide to land, soccer could be on one day, football could be on one day, middle school could be practiced on grass, and then you rotate it. Soccer's on the grass field. Middle school and high school can use the turf. So our kids get access to our facilities. We're not dumping millions of dollars into a facility that college recruits get to use and our kids don't.
Are there any other questions for the group? I appreciate you standing out, enjoying it.
Yeah, I better
Follow you,
open
Coach.
this up.
We're going to go in the classroom today.
Do I get this time added back?
Yes, sir.
We'll take
We'll listen as long as you
We good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me be clear again. I don't blame maintenance for our practice field. Those guys, they're out there working like crazy. I don't blame Dr. Vincent for the situation we're in. I don't blame our current board for the situation that we're in. this is a problem that's been kind of festering really for the last decade to 15 years, and we have failed to address. But right here, we talk about this a lot with my program. In economics, we have opportunity cost, but for our coaches, with time to make decisions and develop a game plan, we only have so much time. We can't talk and discuss and research, because at the end of the day, we have to make a decision and we have to go with it. And it may not be the right decision, but what we want is that sweet spot in terms of opportunity cost. So I keep our coaches, I hold our coaches, and they hold me accountable when it comes down to things like that. When we're sitting in here on a Sunday and a Saturday, trying to figure out our plan. So please keep this in mind. We've researched and we have talked about this stuff for 10 years. And so I'm going to take, Coach Adrian and I, we're going to take a different approach. And we're not talking bond. We're talking about immediate. And when I bring up problems, I'm also one of those guys that doesn't like to just bring up problems, but maybe offer solutions. And I may be way wrong. And I probably am. I'm just a football coach. But I have spent a lot of time, and I'm very passionate about our kids. I'm very passionate about this program and this school, and I want to see some positive change happen. Not talked about, not researched, not discussed, but I want to see it happen. So we have, again, talked. We've gone through this tour 1,000 times. And guess what? If we did it again, I will show up again. If it means promoting our kids. I'm not sure. I'm just an old AP government teacher, but I do know that there's 3 lawsuits, I believe 2 in California, 1 in Florida, because of their lack of facilities, and they are not Title IX compliant. Now, I don't know law, but I wonder if we're even Title IX compliant with our facilities currently. We're here to, again, I believe that something has to happen now. I believe that something has to happen out of capital outlay. I also understand that if we make that decision to roll funds into cap outlay or from cap outlay into a facility, that if a boiler goes down, then Dr. Vincent's probably looking for a new job. I understand the situation completely. But I also understand that there are options that we have not even looked into. We have not looked into the Community Foundation, to my knowledge, which gives away over $3 million a year. And we have not looked into that as a possible funding for, a lease purchase agreement. We have budgeted $116,000 roughly therein for the last 10 years with our contract. Can that not be rolled over into a lend purchase agreement? Plus, it's about $50,000 is what our old groundskeeper told me is what we spent on water. Now, I don't know if that's true, but that's what he told me. So you're reducing that cost as well. And again, I'm just a dumb football coach, but I have done the research on our budget. We spend over $6 million out of our levy for the rec commission. And that's how they're financed through us, which is not uncommon for a lot of districts. However, I will tell you, out of the 32 comparable districts, Buhler, Circle, Mulvane, 0. So our rec commission does a great job. I mean, they're the ones that turf the baseball and softball field. However, we are also giving them $1.6 million, almost $1.6 million per year to operate.
Hey, Coach.
Yes, sir.
Just so I'm clear, because I didn't want to interject or restate that. I'm going to interject, but I didn't want to influence anybody's presentation for you. I would be remiss if I didn't remind this board that rec commissions, by statute, have to pick a funding source.
Yeah.
And I'm really more than anything sharing this with probably the people who are listening at home. That's not our money. Okay, they choose which municipality that their levies come through, and so that 6.1 mil has nothing to do with USD 418. It's on our books, and it's a pass through every year. So that 6.1 mils and the 1.6 million it generates is for the MRC to make their choices around, and that is independently, doesn't have anything to do with us.
Can you clarify, just because this is new to me, where that actually comes from and passes through before it goes?
It comes from taxpayers in the USD 418 district, and it is on our budget, and it goes directly from 418 taxpayers through our budget and directly to the MRC. So just to also speak clearly on that, there are a couple of other items that can be done that same way, and an example is public libraries. And so there's a couple of examples in the state of Kansas where public libraries use their local school district to establish their budget. Ellenwood, Kansas is an example that I can think of, and so their public library shows up on their budget, but that money is that public library's money. So I just want to be clear, we don't give MRC anything taxpayers are levied a tax, and that flows to the MRC to support their budget. We could not, 418, you could try to vote 7-0 to move away from that, and you don't have that authority. It's statutorily how they fund their budget. So that, just wanted to clarify.
And yeah, I think our rec commission's amazing. I'm not saying that this is not right. They're awesome. But would they have any funds available? I mean, we're talking about bureaucracies grabbing for money. It's no different than the federal government at this point. And we're trying, I understand we may be eating each other here, but we're trying to find
we
ways.
don't control that money. That's beyond our control.
And I'm saying if we talked to them about helping us as an option.
Because undoubtedly they would probably, as a youth program, use that for something. If there's a stadium,
correct,
there's going to be something that MRC says, hey, we would love to host that at MHS Stadium. I mean, I get where you're going with that.
And again, I know in bringing this up I'm going to upset people, but I'm trying to find solutions here, and I'm just the football coach. I get that, but I'm trying to find and offer solutions. Our costs. I don't know if we've taken bids yet in terms of what would it cost to put something in, like now. And I know the Hutton folks are here, and I apologize, but I sat down with Mammoth Turf at a clinic I don't care who it comes from, by the way. I will hug you if we get something done. All right? I really don't care who it comes from, but, bids. I've done the work. I've sat down with them, and the only reason I sat down with them is they were at our clinic. And I also know what the going rate for a school in terms of a lend purchase agreement is. And I also know that is the last district in Kansas that was 2.9% funded by a bank in Texas. I also know that a local bank got wind of that and offered 2.9%, so all of the proceeds stayed local. But we need something now. Now, we've talked about this at great length in terms of lessons learned. Kids don't learn things in the classroom that they ought to learn anymore. They don't. If they fail a test, they get to retake it. If they don't turn in an assignment on time, they get grace or leniency. And in sport, there's no reset button. When we lose, and we lose in front of thousands of people. But what a great way to learn some valuable lessons. And so I do believe that an athletic facility, is the biggest and most impactful classroom that you could have in a district. Again, you've seen the roundhouse. This is what we have. You've seen the tennis courts. This is what we have. We have 2 turfed baseball fields for one team to practice on. We have 2 turf softball fields for one team to practice on. And I am thankful for that because my daughter plays softball. And I love that she has that opportunity to go out there and play every single day. This is what we have. We have nothing for track and field. I don't know how to address this anymore, but our kids deserve a place to learn. And we haven't provided that for them. And that's scary. Coach Adrian.
So my concern with the soccer is if the solution is a bond solution, what does that mean for my team for the next 3 years? Where do we play? What generates excitement for kids to come out? What do they have pride in? And that's an entire, like that'd be my entire 40 girls that I have on the soccer team to tell them, hey, I'm sorry, your experience is going to be far less greater than what the class had before you. And that's not fair for that many kids to be in that position. And if the solution for soccer, which is what I fear, is I'll just send them to Grant and play there. We've had to do that before when they renovated the turf at the college. Well, I say renovated the turf, found all the issues with the stadium and had to spend money on that. But there's just so many drawbacks for us having to go there. I mean, you're practicing here at the high school, you're playing games there, you're playing on the turf at other places. That's 3 different surfaces you're playing on. And what we saw when we had that team that was excellent that year is just it always took 20 minutes into every game to kind of get used to where you're playing. And it's just such a disadvantage for your players to have. And just, Coach Pavis said it, just the lack of pride in what we have. We have truly never had anywhere that is our own, where we can go into the locker room and plant our core values for kids to see, where we can have pride in our facility, where I can go to practice and not have to worry about what my girls are hearing on the field from the track kids, the college track guys running around. And those are all things that, as coaches, that should not be something we're having to plan for and plan around. And I feel like we just constantly have had to find ways to make it work. And that's kind of the feeling I've had since I've been here, and it's tiring. It'd be nice to have a facility that is for you and not one that you're working around other people's schedules and making it work. The logistics of going to Grant, again, if that's the short-term solution for our soccer program, is a nightmare. Having to get everyone there, we've already talked about the transportation of kids. There's no press box to film games, so girls don't have any scouting material to send to college for half of the games that they play during a regular season. There's no lights, and so we're playing games at 3 and 5:30, which means parents are getting off of work just to get to their kids' games. And that was all the issues that we had to go through that year. The crowd, I'm sure we have the data to see how few people go to games at Grant. It's not a great venue to go watch. The times for classmates and peers to come watch, well, they're at track practice when their friends are playing soccer, and so they don't come to games. And all those things are just one on top of each other, to me, put our programs at a severe disadvantage when the expectation stays the same. And it's exhausting, having to plan for all of the other things other than the X's and O's and the relationships that you want to build with the kids out there. If it rains, we got to pack up all the equipment for announcing because none of that can get wet out there. So that happened the one time. And for me, what breaks my heart is when I've got even guys looking at next year and seniors asking me, well, where's senior night going to be? Because that for them is a huge deal. And I have to tell them, I honestly don't have an answer. I don't know where we're going to be playing, if it's here in McPherson, if we're traveling away games for every game. I don't know. And there's no way that is not going to have an impact on our programs over the long term. There's just no way that that's not going to have a detrimental impact on what's going on. So sorry if I went over.
No, you want to look at dimensions here. You know, we talk about the field goal, and it's not sour grapes. We own it. We lost it. We lost the game. But our kids are playing on a college surface. That would be like telling Coach Kinnaman, hey, you're going to practice all week at Trinity Lutheran's carpeted basketball courts with no three-point lines, but yet you're expected to perform well on Friday nights. That to me is absolutely ludicrous. 95% of all football plays occur from one hash or the other. It's a known fact. We play on college hashes, which are 3 yards inside of high school hashes. So we have to form our entire game plan around where we're playing. If we're playing at home, we're going to have a different game plan than if we're playing on the road. We've played in state semifinal games where there's 5,000 people there, and we did not have access to a locker room. We were sitting in the hallway before the game. That's not providing our kids much of an opportunity. I can't think of a more efficient way to spend funds. This is what it would impact daily. Now, we're not, I know that folks want to put a pool in, and you know what, I'm all for it. Fantastic. But we're talking about, affecting 40 kids. We can affect over 1,500 kids with the decision that we make. But again, it comes down to, I tell my daughters this. Don't listen to what a young man tells you. Just watch what he does. Therein lies his true intentions. So we can talk all we want. But I would encourage you to take action for our kids. Coach alluded to this already, and we're almost done. But what you guys see, what the public sees on game day is just the tip of the iceberg. All of this occurs without anyone around. And it is exhausting. It's exhausting for our kids. We don't have any pride in anything. And it's getting to be impossible to keep our head above water at this point. And guys, all I ask is that we have something to work on. Something to work with. That's all I ask. We are not asking you for anything extravagant. Rose Hill is going to put in a second turf. Andover Central just put this in. Mulvane put this in a few years ago. Arc City has put this in. Augusta, which is beautiful, right outside of their basketball facility, put this in. Bueller spent $12 million on facilities, athletic facilities alone. Circle, beautiful facilities. Great Bend, beautiful facilities. Folks, these are people that we are playing every week. Junction City just put in a multi-million-dollar facility. They are on our schedule next year, by the way. Salina Schools, beautiful facility. Again, we've talked about it, but I fear that we're almost to a death sentence for our programs if we don't have a place to operate. And I'm not exaggerating. And I lose sleep at night knowing that we're in this situation. Again, they've already talked about. We lost a young man. Mom works at Cedars. Dad works in Mays. And he came to school here for 2 weeks. And he was a phenomenal football player and phenomenal kid. And he came to me and he said, "Coach, I'm sorry, we're moving to Mays. This place is a dump." And he's in Mays. We're losing good people. We're not just losing people, we're losing good people. So, I don't know. Sorry. Questions? I know we've asked and answered a lot. And guys, I apologize. I tried to keep emotions out of this, but this has been my 16th year here. And we've had this discussion 16 years ago. I had this discussion with our athletic director at the time. And we've had this discussion on multiple occasions with Mr. Bacchus. And, we need to take action. So.
Coach, I appreciate it. We have run long.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I think it's important that you hear that, and I think it's fine to share the emotion. The one thing that I think what they've highlighted as we get ready to transition, and I'm going to use it as an opportunity to just remind this board and our community and the people who are listening, because it's hard sometimes when we share stuff in emotion, it can feel like it's being directed directly at you, that you're not taking action on something. We brought forward a bond issue this past summer through the work of a lot of people in this room, and our community resoundingly said no to it. So that's the situation that you guys are in, and we're all a part of finding the solution and the path forward. This is why these are meaningful conversations, because 16 years ago the conversation started, and 16 years later we're sitting here and we still have needs. Thank you for listening to this. Thank you for talking with these guys and hearing this. We have some significant needs. We had an opportunity to address every single one of the needs in our facility study, and it didn't, and it got voted differently. We heard from our community that wasn't the solution. This is the reboot, the re-opportunity to get back into the game and start looking at how we're going to do this. So thank you, coaches. Thank you, Shane. We're going to transition now to classrooms. So Sheldon and that crew, we're going to transition to through the hexes. I'll have them talk about some of the maintenance in the hexes, and then we're going to meet with Mrs. Fluhoff and Mrs. Harvey. Thank you.
Where are we going?
I think we're going to go into the library or the 60s. They want to see the fax room or the notes are, but we want to start over here.
So we're starting here? Okay. You guys are talking?
Yeah, this is the part of the building where earlier this fall we were talking about these guys working their tail off, repiping some things. And they were able to get all 6 hexes repiped, which is 6 rooms similar to this. There's one that's maybe a little bigger, but basically they tore all this apart in here, and that's where the pipes, the water wasn't getting through these cassettes. And so that's causing heating and air conditioning issues, because in the spring or in the fall, before it gets cold, we're in the cooling mode yet, so we got cold water flowing through here. And we got to shut it down, change over to the boilers so we can bring hot water through here for the winter time. And when the pipes are plugged up, if you ever go into Jason's office, there's a piece of a pipe laying on the table, completely plugged up. And that's what these guys had to do. They had to cut all this loose and repipe it and re-insulate it, and that just fixed the water flow problem.
You mean calcium deposits from not using soft water, or what are we talking
Well,
about?
just water treatment in general. We treat the water, and we have a guy come in every year, and but just it's 1963 pipes. It's stainless steel or a galvanized pipe, and they're just not designed to last that long. So the supply water, we didn't repipe all that. We're still using old supply lines, so we could still have some issues break loose. But at least the controls and the valves, and we can shut units off and clean them out and have better maintenance in them, and hopefully not for too many more years, but they can wash out and clean them more efficiently because they put drain downs on them and things like that as they repiped it. So if earlier, well, you can still hear this one. Hear that little. That's pneumatic stats. That's something from back in the 60s. Pneumatic is
it's using air from an air compressor versus an electronic signal for the thermostat.
They basically they went out back in the 70s or 80s. So we've maintained it though. So it's at the end of life. It's not because it's not been maintained. It's just done. And that's where we're at in this whole area of the building that we're dealing with. And these guys done a great job getting back on at least workable solutions here. So then the classrooms are similar. If you look in Emily's classroom, the walls are shifting out. And if you walk closer to that outside wall, it's dropping down. So the wall the footings are what they would told me, and I guess Kevin can address this a little bit, but these floors are not pinned to the walls. They're just floating floor, so they move a lot. And then as the outside walls give away, it just everything's dropping. And so, I don't know when it was in the 2000s, we did the science hexes, and we spent almost $750,000 on repairs of these rooms like this, and that's just 3 of them now. So it's going to take a lot of work if we're going to keep this part of the building, which I don't recommend at all. Neither do these guys.
These cassettes are also the original ones for the building, and I don't believe any of them have been replaced.
So if they fail, we got to get an engineer to find out how to build a new one, and then get it built, and then get it in here. So they're not readily available on eBay or anywhere else. We just didn't find them. So when we started the repiping process, they started doing research to see if one of these was completely plugged up, what are we going to do? And we found the answer. It's going to have to be rebuilt by the company, and the cost of that was going to be more than we wanted to even know. So luckily, they were able to break them loose and get them all flowing with water, and we just don't have the control part of it yet. And that's what you're hearing hissing over here on this one. So it's still the 1963 controls on it.
Was it always open like this?
Yeah, this area here.
Really?
It's really, this is designed to be a teacher's workroom, so they can come here and do their work and then go into their classrooms. So, Emily, or do you guys want to say anything about your classrooms?
Well, I took pictures when they were in here working all that week, and of the old and the new, and it's just miraculous the time they spent in each one of these 5 areas total. Six. This one took a week, and we taught class, and it was, we closed our doors, and they worked diligently and so hard, thank you, and got it all replaced. And it was just amazing when you see the age of the old to the new, what they had to do. And they were on a time crunch because it was between air conditioning and heating season, and they just worked swiftly, and it went great. But
well, they even too, I want to say, and I let someone know, we used to keep most of our novels in here, and water came in, and so when we found out they had to move this, so they worked and got all that stuff out one morning before we even got here. So that was amazing because we were gonna do it, and they had it done, so we just haven't put stuff back.
if you look, you can see the remnants of where water has come out. We were talking earlier this evening, you could do a facelift on it, but it just every so often. And now with this done, probably less, but it's always, what will be next, so type thing.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you the question, we know the condition of the facilities, but what's best practices for learning and how your classrooms are set up and the space you need? So you're welcome, you guys can come in my room also, but just even with the temperature, that's a major factor. Just on a regular day in and day out, just, hierarchy of needs, are kids comfortable? And when it's, as you'll see, the tape in here, we can come in here. This isn't like washing decorative tape on one window. It was literally on our wall. So temperature is a big impact of stuff. This is the repair that, it used to just be the 2x4s, but this has been repaired. So
we were able to fill in the crack with the filler, and then we still kept the 2x4s there, but it's still moving. Yeah, we get it fixed for a while, and then it opens up even more.
I can take these down. This is so if you guys, if you're wanting to look here, you can just see it goes like this all the way. Yeah. And then it follows, and it goes all the way down there. We'll see what oh yeah, and then if you, hey buddy, you want to go to the hallway? And then if you walk outside the door, it's pretty bad. And yeah, it is what it is. So temperature is obviously reality.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah, sure.
Can you stand by the microphone while you're telling this? Sorry.
No, that's fine. I didn't know. Just in general, and when I've had student teachers, just how my classroom's set up, I always have had the desk here, and that's just an embarrassing reality of where they've had to be. If it's been in the fall, dress warmly in all reality.
or it's hot, you know, just because of, one of my subs actually taped this up for me the other day. He noticed because it was pretty cool in here. So yeah, and then just the aesthetic or just the feel. The kids, it just needs some work done, needs some TLC right outside that door. Yeah, it's pretty, I don't know the gap here, it's the same when you walk outside the door too, above in the ceiling, but.
Rebecca, talk about teaching.
Yeah, so teaching, one thing even that I've noticed, obviously, that I would love this, you know, because of the age of the building, one thing with Chromebooks being used so much, with just technology, a regular part of our day, more so than it's been in years past too, is I have like 3 plugins in my classroom. And so I'm always worried about, there's one right there too, like legitimately kids tripping on cords, and it happens. And I know this can't be, these are safe, these are the ones they give us to use, but that can't be great when kids need a Chromebook plugged in and charging or a phone. It's just the reality of our world now. So there's cords during the day. There are cords everywhere. So I would love just outlets would be something amazing to have, and board space, and yeah. So it's definitely impacts our regular. That they worked, like Rebecca mentioned, they were amazing. But I've been in this room probably 12 years off and on in my career here at the high school, and temperature has been an issue the whole time I've been here.
Emily, it's wonderful to provide for the kids, but that's what that blanket.
Yeah, the blankets are for the temperature. Those are not those. That's legitimate blankets. So those get washed. Kids are great about helping out with that too here at the high school as well. But that's a realistic thing that kids have as well.
What about the size of your classrooms? I mean, I noticed there's no desks. You have tables. Is this a sufficient size, or?
For most of my classes, you know, honestly, I have mostly juniors and seniors this year. Some seniors, they can get pretty big too. I think I have a big class. My biggest class is 26 seniors, and so it can be pretty tight in here. I do like the desks because we do so much just collab and discussion stuff, but it's definitely a tight fit. So space would be wonderful too. I've learned, like, this is just a whiteboard. I had a Promethean board years ago, and then I wasn't utilizing it. But now I would like something different. I can write on it, but it's not how my classroom would function the best. I need my projector all the time. I have a TV, obviously, that can project, but it's so small that I can't use it. So I use my projector all the time. It's wireless, but it's a little makeshift wireless. I get AirPlay over there, but. And honestly, the internet, as Rebecca, it's not always sufficient, and so being hardwire plugged in to things as much as possible is helpful.
So it depends on the rooms. You're welcome to peek in our other classrooms. I mean, she's got the natural light. My room behind this wall doesn't have the climate issues as much as hers with the outer wall, but there are some differences to the layout of the room.
I will notice too something else just with how curriculums change and things that we do differently in classroom. Our walls are very thin. You can hear conversations. You can hear word for word what's going on in classes, and that's if you're. And so my little setup here is to show something, or when we watch something or view something, or even music or me talking, I can hear the same thing from Mr. Reed's class. So thin walls, I guess, would be something as well. The storage would be wonderful. Like, that's my storage. I know we take a lot of our stuff home now too, just because we're worried about it being damaged. So then we're hauling stuff back and forth. You know, seasonal stuff even, or just stuff that you want to work on at home because you're worried about having water damage. I know it's been, and yeah, so we haven't wanted to cross that bridge as much.
So one of the things that we heard during the campaign last year was someone said to me, "Oh, Shiloh, you're exaggerating stuff. Kids don't really wear blankets in classrooms."
No, they do very regularly. Boys walk around. I mean, it's
Is that a blanket rack?
That is, yeah, that is. Oh, I did want to point out though that the dimmed lights, that is by my choosing. The custodians, I've asked them because I don't like it as bright in here, and the kids don't either. So that has been done intentionally by not having those light bulbs in. But yeah, to be able to manage our lighting would be amazing
I
as
would
well.
love to do that on my room, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, to take the
They have
lights
to
out.
all be bright, so.
Just, that is also a roof. So there's just this much concrete. In most places it gets thinner as it gets up towards the top. So as they work on the roof, if it's during the school year, they hear everything up there and down here. Because when they did the roof, just drilling through to put their metal tracks in to hold the roof material, a lot of times they came through and we get tar dripping inside here, other Texas.
And our custodians do a great job, but like I said, I've been in the high school since '07. I think I've had this room for a total of 12 years. This is the same carpet that I bought. I mean, I've never had new carpet installed. The tables I got, I think, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, but I had the original desks up until then.
25 years old, maybe the carpet.
Yeah, probably.
So,
And these rooms would be, this is Harlan, your rooms are just examples of what the other rooms in the hexes. They are all signed text that was updated a little bit, but.
And with recent things, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that exit door right there is horrible now that, just with things you think of them, kids can't come in there because it's just an easy exit for kids. And you hear it sometimes and you don't know if they're supposed to be leaving or if they are, so that's a safety issue I have. Rebecca and I talked even today, like as you guys look straight through the hex door right there, we try really hard. Kids are not allowed to cross through there, but they sneak by every once in a while. But we try really hard, or if we run to get something, to keep those doors shut so that students or anybody can access through there. But it's a huge safety concern of mine as well, that I could be teaching, we forgot to leave that door shut, and we're open season for whatever. Not even anything. It's just not. I just don't think it's definitely not safe. It's not necessary. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. But yeah, the outlets. I know that would be like a dream come true to have outlet space and more than three.
I have a Chromebook charging station in my room, but it's always, one time Mr. Wells was making, pancakes or something?
Yeah, and the charger.
And the breaker flipped. So we're always worried that something's gonna overload it too. So.
And it has happened.
So this is a pretty good representation of like damage that could be seen in other classrooms just around.
This is probably one of the worst ones,
Okay.
but
They're all seeing something.
They're all seeing building, the ground shifting, foundation moving, and basically most of the hex area.
And the hexes were all built at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and I just, the safety stuff's been on my mind lately too. But I have my cell phone, but we try to model to our students, to have those out as little as possible and when not necessary. However, if there were an emergency, like we don't have any way to contact anybody in our hex. The phones can't even be wired. Dr. Herbst was really great when she started this summer. I don't remember what she said, but she wanted to know if we wanted that little hex area right as you walk out to have the phone wired so we could call out or call the office, and it won't support whatever, I don't know. She explained it to us, but I can't remember. She just
wanted to have every room to have access to call the office, especially if you were having to send a kid for discipline, and we can't do that because some classrooms have speakers.
Which I do have, and I do use, and another thing too, teachers or when you want to call a parent or talk, you don't want to always use your personal cell phone. And so we have nowhere that we can make professional phone calls in private unless we use our own phones. I mean, we could go sit in the office, but I have nowhere, so I have nowhere to work in our space as we're supposed to work, to call or, good or bad phone calls. Or for an emergency. And that, I do use that if there's ever a situation. I have used that before.
That's if they work.
That's if they work, and it alerts so like the whole office can hear. It's like me intercomming the office. So that's not best practice either. But mine does work. So I have used it.
If they don't work, let me know, because we.
Yeah.
So if it's in a room, it should be working. Questions for board before we transition to the next spot?
Thanks, sure. Jonathan, thanks
Mrs.
for coming.
Starkville, Mrs. Spinhoff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For getting this cruise. Actually, yeah, let's cruise through that factor and then we'll go. Okay, we're gonna transition to the next.
We're listening to you guys this time? You were talking.
Again, we're talking the 1963 classroom that hasn't really changed too much, obviously, by looking at the countertops and everything, the cabinets and everything. And one time the teacher was like, there's just water. I think we got a leaky sink. Well, when we came in here to look, our HVAC pipes had blown open and was just spraying everything up in there, and it ruined the cabinets over here. So, we patched that. And what happened was he tried to patch it in there, and it ended up coming back further into here to patch it because he couldn't find a good enough piece of pipe to re-tie onto, because the galvanized pipe is that shot for 1963. So again, it's another area where kids are coming here to learn, and this is their classroom. So it hasn't changed much. I think you were saying something.
Well, it's the same. I graduated in '95. This is the same kitchen I took classes in, and I still use today. And I came in one day, and the faucets were running, and I told her, hey, I went and said something to her because I turned them on. She goes, oh, I have to turn them on every morning to get hot water for at least 10 minutes. And when I come in here and work during like basketball tournaments and stuff, yeah, I wash dishes mostly in the cold water because I never can get hot.
So you guys got anything to add about this classroom, what you worked on? With HVAC issues, still climate control, and the same pneumatic stats are over here as you've seen in the other classrooms. So just pretty clustered up. The teacher, we had some problems with our breakers and obviously safety issues with the outlets and the water. They're not up to code, but we did bring them up to code in a different way. We put breakers that break with the ground fault on them instead of replacing all the outlets along the whole facility. So we've made it safe. It just doesn't look like it. So to replace all the outlets and everything that they need was going to be an outrageous dollar amount. So we went back to just the breakers and the breaker panel and made those ground faults. So if they drop a blender in the sink with water in, it's going to break the breakers. So we did some of that. We just doesn't, our fire department every year, okay, and then they go back and look at the panel and go, okay, you're all right. So that's because in today's codes, this kitchen would be up to code if we didn't have that done. So, any questions or comments in here?
Well, as you can see, if you go around to all the ovens, it tells you that they're running 25 degrees low or high, so you have to set it. If your recipe calls for 350 and it runs low, so you're going to have to bump it up or it runs high, you're going to bump it up or down.
So even the ovens are, well, this is pretty cool. Some of them have been replaced with last top ones.
But they're still, yeah.
And again, this was wired in 1963. Today's technology has microwaves and different appliances and things, so you get too many going, the breaker's going to pop. And wait a minute, got to go back, and there goes your class time. So or somebody in the next classroom over has plugged something else into, and that causes it to break. And we just need updated electricity too, and technology, not just the building, but the stuff inside it too needs to be updated. So there's lots of challenges we face, and we just try to face them every day. We get up and see what else we can fix. So
The final station will be to the mechanical room. We get to go see that. Please watch your head as we're getting in there and don't be clicking
We're gonna go
around.
down.
Anything's go down, just shoot across the.
Shoot across and go down that door right up front of the bathrooms.
Sounds good.
I do it on the phone, but I do more things up here. But yeah.
They might.
Put it right there.
When I first came to work for the school district in 2006 in October, we had a big, huge boiler right there and a big, huge boiler here. And about where Brian's standing, we had a big, huge red hot water circulation tank and pumps down below it. And one of the things with the 360 Energy Ed project we did was take all that out and repurpose, put new HVAC hot water and then residential hot water over there, and new pumps in this area, and a lot of that old stuff went away, and these more high efficient boilers, both those and this. There's your pneumatic stats for you. Runs on that air compressor about every 20 minutes, so we'll try not to have to talk around that too much. But this room changed quite a bit. One of the roundhouse air handlers is right here. That's one of the new ones. And then if you want to look that way, there's the old one over on that side of the mechanical room. For the other, we replaced them opposite of each other. So one suggestion, if we do keep the roundhouse, would be to put those other two when we replace them as standalone units, so they can be run during the no school times, or because then we don't have to bring up all these boilers to just get the gym cooled off or heated down or heated up. So if we keep this facility for the roundhouse, I'd encourage us to just change those other two older ones out with standalone units that can run independently, so we can just bring the gym on by itself instead of the whole building. Because the thing about chilled water and hot water, you got to have enough demand and need for it to flow through the whole building before these will kick on and start feeding up the water. So those rooms that are in the outer perimeters, if they're cold, if that's the only room that's cold, these aren't going to come on to heat water to it. So that's another, advantages of big water sources like that for heating and cooling are good, but then there's also some bad points to it. But that's similar with forced air too.
Don't forget, this might be off topic, but some of the classrooms have almost like a wall heater type system. I've been.
Yeah, this was water popping through.
Okay, that seems
It's a lower cassette down on the ground.
I just heard two teachers talking before, something about a screwdriver to try to get it to work, and I was like, oh boy, we're going to be talking about that. So that came up, and I heard the real-time conversation about having to fix it with a screwdriver to get it to the heat of the classroom that way. Okay.
Any questions about this area? One of the first things, was it Jason that first summer, or at the start of the school year, I called him up and we had water bubbling out of the parking lot over here.
Yes.
And
About 2 or 3 weeks before school started.
Yeah. So I called Jason on a Sunday morning and said, hey, we got the problem. And that was when we put the water pipes overhead outside for the cool water from the chiller over there to bring cool water over to the old building. Several years before that, we did it with the hot water. That's when we separated the new building and put a mechanical room over behind their office and put boilers and the big chillers over there. So the cold water or hot water on this side is from these units, and for the 95 auditorium and all those classrooms over there, it's from units over there. We had to separate because we had water leaks underground. And there's like 19 high voltage conduits on top of the water that was underground. So we didn't feel it was safe
Dave started looking at it and he goes, no, this isn't what we want to do. So we went overhead with the cold water to come back this way for this part of the building.
This is also a two-pipe system where we upgrade to a four-pipe system. Can't run heat and cool at the same time, we only run one or the other.
This building, older part of the building has two pipes, a supply pipe and return pipe coming back here. Over in the 95 edition has four pipes. The supply and return for cool and supply and return for the heat. So we can be more efficient, like in those cool mornings in the fall, have heat. Afternoon when it's hot, we can cool them off a little bit. But we can't do that here because we got either hot water or cold water. Any other questions about the mechanical room? These guys have done a great job babysitting all this pneumatic controls and stuff.
Beautiful room, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's not how beautiful clean it is.
for how congested it was before, it is nice to come down here and actually see less junk, everywhere.
So we're talking with clients on what kind of mechanical system they should pick for a brand new building. The hydronic system, the water, hot, cold water. That is the best system because there's efficiencies, but it also has the longest life. We say 40 to 45 years is what you should expect that to last. And yours has lasted longer, so I think that is a testament to the maintenance it's gone into.
And these newer units, we've already had some issues with it and had to work on them. So the new stuff just isn't going to be designed to last as long as what we've been able to get out of the two older boilers, but you can't get a new car to last as long as we used to do. So.
With the money we spent on these, would we be able to retrofit these into, let's assume the old bond is what we did with the new building. Would we be designing the system around these, or would that money all just go to waste?
I think the boilers that we're seeing here are new enough that they still have life, so it would make sense to reutilize those in the calculations.
That's what our plans were.
In 2017 was.
Yeah.
Right.
So they got life in them. And whether it's in this building or a newer building or one of our other buildings, that we could refit them to.
So two of these units will do the whole building. We just got to be done with it.
Did the proposal for the last bond issue take care of the problem where the round has to be either heated or cooled, or that be the same?
We had proposed a new mechanical system that used four pipes.
And we can really cool and heat the roundhouse with just two units most of the time. So, like I said, we'd probably plan on having those other two units that are still the older ones, replace them with units that don't have maybe all the pipes tied to them, so we don't have to. If we got activities in the gym during the summer to cool that gym, we got to put a major load on the whole building. If we have those other two units, they could, if they're standalone, they could just cool the gym or heat the gym if it's Christmas break, and we could shut down the big units and save energy. So that was our goal. Is the other two units that are still old, they still need to be replaced. If we replace them, we want to put units that work by themselves without tying it into all this.
I'd also like to add controls for this side of it. The original part of the high school are running on a 1996 version of Insight, which is no longer upgradable, as you guys know. Parts are also very few far between to get a hold of in place, so we're looking at upgrades in the near future.
And the control system in this building, we have two different actual control software programs running. Whether it's software that runs just the mechanical plant down here and that one over there. And then the rooms are all controlled by the 1996 edition, which is no longer upgradable. They don't even sell parts for that stuff anymore. So when we have an issue, we go to eBay and other places to try to find parts. Because the actual company that reps it, they want to sell us all new stuff, and we would like that, but we don't have the budget for it. So.
And your system did get hacked.
been hacked twice. And that's not good. When the computer's not coming, when Brian comes in, wants to see what's going on and nothing's there, he's got to go out and spend a lot more time hunting down what the problem is and trying to fix it. Because the software program's just blank because they hacked us. And with the newer software, some of that's protected better than the 1996 software that's running. So we have needs in that area that's lots of money as well. Kevin, you got anything to add for that part of it?
Yeah, if you really want to go see a 59-year-old piece of equipment over there, it's
And as you walk up, just walk on across and see the big chunk of metal looks like that over there. It's the older version of it.
Is there any final comments about this area or anything?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? That's an air handler. That's one of the older ones, 1963, I think it was put in. It goes directly into the gym, so those of you that sit in the gym and feel the cold air coming down your back, that's
freezing.
Yeah, you gotta have so much fresh air per exchange through rules for health and safety issues and things like that. So we gotta bring fresh air in from outside in the middle of winter. That's when it first starts up, that's all that fresh air in the ductwork. And then it comes through and mixes with the heated air through the hot water pipes going through it. Or summer, you got cold water going through it. And then blows across the fins in there, and then cold air goes across, or hot air, depending on what season it is. And there's one just exactly like that in the kitchen area. Well, you take down the banners, and as the roundhouse was designed, the air up in the 4 units were going to shoot across, hit the floor, and bounce up and dissipate into the crowd. Well, we want so many banners, they hung them up there, and now the air hits the banners and comes straight down.
I know.
People are cold. Well, guys, it's been great spending this time with you. I've appreciated your time. And we, the two back there work their tails off every day. And that's just two of them. We got an electrician, we have a grounds guy, and a carpenter. They all work great. They're a great team to work with. And we got a lot of issues, and they come to work every day just about to fix what they can that day. And sometimes that is disappointing and frustrating, just like the coaches, because we like to keep things fixed up too. So we only got so big a budget and so much money and so many hours in the day too. So.
Those guys, they called one of our mechanical coordinators and said, we're trying to fix the area. Remember when we were spending the X's in the teachers area? So we're trying to fix this and feel like it's a temporary fix. Can you tell us if this fix is the longest lasting, most efficient temporary fix? So they're always looking for the best way to do it. I thought that was really
And we fixed some of the piping issues in the hexes in the 63, but we didn't fix all of them. So like Dr. Vincent said, we could wake up some morning and we have a multi-$1,000 specific issue that just happened overnight, because we got pipes that are still 1963. And that, you know, whether we keep this facility and remodel it, that's definitely something we gotta deal with if we stay here.
We got water flow, we just can't control it. Does that make sense?
And
We're
and we
blind.
still got a lot of galvanized pipe. You know, all this pipe through here is probably all galvanized. You rip that insulation off of it, it's still the old pipe. Maybe not over in this area, because that was all pretty new when we repiped it with that new boilers and stuff. But we still got a lot of hidden issues, like the sewage. We got a sewage pipe that is old clay pipe that runs from outside the west entrance clear out to the ditch out there that can cave in any time too. So there's lots of underground stuff too that when you consider revamping this building, we got to look at all of it. So,
Before that kicks on again and we're not able to hear ourselves think, are there any questions for Sheldon or his team? This has been. I knew it was gonna happen, man. You know it's coming through, it's still coming. I know it. Gotta be here at night. Midnight, you're walking through here. That thing gets on, but that's what you're what's your brother? I don't know. There's one there.
We got 5 minutes.
Okay. I was just going to say, this is the final stop on the tour, so it's up to you, Mr. Johnson. If you want to adjourn now, we can.
Questions or anything, we can adjourn from here. Anyone else have anything for our staff or VLR, Kevin, or Ledges? That was on the search tonight.
Just thank you for everybody's time.
Yeah. Thank you for your guys' stuff. You guys get to make the big decisions now, so we'll help you as best we can.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and call the meeting adjourned then. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.